Hey guys, Andrew Swihart here, talking to you from the 405 freeway. Doing another audio file. Today I want to talk about taking risks. Um, so in my experience, when you're working for somebody else, you generally can kind of take it easy a little bit. You're able to let them carry the load and the responsibility, and you're just given a task to perform, and you can focus on that. And there's good things to be said about that, because you can really delve deep into the intricacies of that task and accomplish it and make it look really good. However, when you're bidding on projects and you're working for yourself, it's not uncommon to experience more anxiety, because you want to do something, but you realize that there's some real costs and time limits involved. And that's a different set of issues than just being creative or doing a technical task. It's not uncommon to feel overwhelmed, and it's not uncommon to feel nervous when bidding on something and being awarded a job that perhaps you haven't done before, or maybe there's more to it than you thought, or maybe you're just nervous about doing something that you haven't done before. This is normal. In fact, one of my mentors, when I bid on projects, I commented to him that I wasn't able to sleep all that night, because when I bidded on this project, I was just terrified. It was a big bid. There was a lot of moving parts to making it happen. And I commented to him, I said, do you normally feel sick when you give a bid? And his reaction surprised me, and he said, well, not anymore. I've been doing it long enough. So, and he's, run his own company for 25 years. So, it happens to the best of them. Even my father, he's a contractor, house painting contractor, and I mentioned it to him. I said, "Do you ever feel sick when putting in a bid?" And he said, "Yeah." So it's normal. So the theme of this talk is like I said, taking risks, and it's important that you take risks, because if you just follow the crowd, if you just follow the herd, yes, you can carve out a nice life for yourself, but usually where people differentiate themselves from the pack, kind of like your Elon Musks or your Steve Jobs, those kinds of people, or Walt Disney, those kinds of people, you start to see people breaking away from the herd and pursuing something that nobody else is pursuing, or at least their own sort of view of life. And those people I really look up to. I don't necessarily agree with all of their stances on all their issues, but as far as being risky in business, and being courageous and going after something that they're passionate about, I really respect that. Now, there's a lot of guys that I know that are professional artists, they're freelance artists. They don't want to start their own companies. They don't want to do, big extraordinary things. A lot of them want to make their own movies or their own TV shows and whatnot, and I think this falls into that category. But they want, most people want to do something bigger than themselves, and they want to do something that excites them, that's interesting. So one of the people that I really look up to, I want to give a little kind of scenario here, is Walt Disney. Now, I don't particularly care for Disney movies. I didn't grow up watching them. We didn't have a TV when I was a kid, so I pretty much just read a lot of books and drew a lot and listened to the radio. I didn't grow up watching Disney cartoons, so I don't really have a passion for them. But what I do have a passion for is this guy's career was just super impressive. And of course, Disney, right? But what people don't know is how risky and how gutsy he was when his entire life in the business sense. He was always on the cutting edge of technology, and he was always making moves toward these big, lofty dreams that he had. Now, it's kind of hard to look back at 1920 and say, well, cutting edge technology, what did that look like then? Because it's such a long time ago. It's almost like talking about cutting edge technology in ancient Egypt. It has a sort of like antiquated feel. But Disney, he got a job at an art studio in Los Angeles making cartoons, and this is back when they didn't actually draw cartoons. It was like moving puppets on a board, kind of like South Park style, and they would take photographs of it. And he worked at I think it was like he worked at some place for like 6 months or 2 months. It was a really short amount of time, and he said, I could do this better. And he started his own company. And I don't know too many people who do that, and I think that's really impressive. And I really look up to people who do that kind of thing. For whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure why, but they just have this sense of themselves. They have a sense of destiny. They want to do something big, and for no other reason than maybe they just think that they're capable of it. Not even because they want to become rich and powerful. They just want to be their own boss. They want to be in control of their own destiny. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that should be something that we applaud, and we do in this country. That's what, one of the things that's exciting about America is that rogue spirit is rewarded here. Sort of the maverick mentality. So now, of course, Disney immediately went out of business and went bankrupt. And a lot of people don't know that about Walt Disney, is that he actually went bankrupt a number of times. And when he was starting out, that still didn't scare him off. He still came back for more because he just had, I don't know if it was a sense of destiny, but he just had this passion. I mean, looking back, it's easy to say, oh, well, he was Walt Disney. Well, at the time, he was just some, out-of-work animator hanging out at some studio trying to find a job. I mean, he was just some guy. He wasn't, Walt Disney. He didn't have any special privileges. No one opened any doors for him. He just had to do it, on, flying by the seat of his pants and making decisions as he went. The next thing that but this is what's interesting is he was always looking at the cutting edge of technology. And at that time, the cutting edge of technology, no one was doing the things that he was doing. He was always looking for new, innovative, and creative ways to tell the same old stories, right? I mean, stories haven't changed since Socrates. We still tell the same stories, the hero journey. If you ever heard this, the book. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but we basically tell the same story every time. And we look at Hollywood; it's the same story every time. But how do you tell that story? New and exciting ways, creative, new technologies. No one had ever done sound in a cartoon that actually linked with the action of the cartoon. He was the first guy to do that. I mean, that was revolutionary. It blew people away in the theaters. No one could believe it when they saw it. Like, these characters were bouncing around, or I forget what it was, these skeletons were like clacking as they danced, and then they would stop and the clacking stopped. And normally people just played a piano, that was revolutionary at the time. He was the first person to put a human being inside of a cartoon. No one had done that before. He took his niece and he put her inside of a cartoon. That was revolutionary. He was always looking ahead. He had come up with, later on when he became more, when he had his own studio, when they were doing Snow White, he wanted to do it all in color. No one had ever done a feature cartoon, for one, and no one had ever done a feature cartoon in color. And he was like, no, I'm going to do it. And he borrowed everything he had. His house, he borrowed everything. He was completely on the hook for this thing. If he would have crashed and burned, he would have lost everything. And he did it, and he pulled it off. And that's amazing. I mean, what a guy, right? Who does this stuff? So taking risks, if is a big part of seeing your dreams come true. And if you want to live safe and you want to live comfortable, and you just want to be part of the status quo, this this talk isn't for you, but for those of you out there who have big dreams and visions, you can do it. It can happen, but it does require a lot of risk. It requires putting it all on the line. Also, another person I have a lot of respect for, George Lucas. Now, George Lucas has a bad rap these days, but he did start Star Wars, right? He was doing super creative things too at the time that no one had ever done. The way he was using motion-controlled cameras and sets and this goofy idea that he had for this movie, Star Wars. If you ever watched the making of the original Star Wars, like, no one had any faith in this movie but him. No one had any faith except for one producer who believed in him and kept giving him money when he asked for it. There was one producer, I forget his name. But he put everything on the line too. Now, when you put everything on the line, are you guaranteed success? No, you are not guaranteed success. When you put everything on, when you don't put everything on the line and you live conservatively and you don't take risks, are you guaranteed success? No, you're not guaranteed success at all. But you have a much better chance of getting to where you want to be when you take those moves, when you take those risks, when you jump out there, you jump into the deep end and you try to swim. And even if you fail, sometimes you learn the necessary things. You want to fail forward, right? You learn all those things that you need to know, so the next time you try, you don't make those same mistakes again. Anyway, getting back to Walt Disney, just to kind of sum it up, every time he tried something new, which he did constantly, like Disneyland, he actually had to put his entire studio at risk to make Disneyland. I mean, he had won a bunch of Oscars at this point. He had made Mary Poppins. Like, he had done quite a bit of stuff, and the studio was making money. He didn't have to start Disneyland, but he had this vision of Disneyland, and he put the entire thing on the hook, borrowed a whole bunch of money, and sold the public Disneyland, and they bought it. And then he went on to do Imagineering, started Imagineering, right? That's all technology-driven, all this cool stuff no one had ever seen before, Abraham Lincoln, all these amazing things that were all technology. He was always looking ahead. So, if you're trying to tell the same old story the same old way, maybe that's why you're getting this, not a very exciting reception. Maybe think of new and exciting ways of telling that story. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. Kind of a history lesson and kind of a rant. But anyway, have a great day. Talk to you again next time.